Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Coast-to-Coast Combat Hour. I'm your host, Matthew Hawkins, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Ed Carbajal. Ed, busy weekend.
Yeah.
Not probably didn't most of it probably didn't live up to most people's expectations, but I think we kind of got what we thought was coming in most of the scenarios.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it was more of like, so we'll talk. I guess we should go through Friday, Saturday, and obviously with the Jake Paul, Mike Tyson boxing, and then we'll do UFC 309. The there's a lot of like weird aftermath reactions, but I think the experiment as a whole might have been successful as far as like seeing what Netflix can handle when it comes to live sports. And banking on if you have Netflix and you don't have anything to do and you're sitting home on on a Friday night, and it pops up that Mike Tyson and Jake Paul are doing something, you're probably going to tune into it if it's a live thing. So I don't know what you and Doc Lucas, we had briefly spoke about it last week. You and Doc Lucas had messaged me. I was at the Stone Pony when the event started, but I did get home in time. It was in the close to the final two or three rounds of Serrano and Taylor, and that's where I started watching it. Did you have issues watching it?
There was some buffering issues. Mine,
Mm-hmm.
for the most part, held up. There was some issue. It was more issues than normal.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely was inconvenienced at times, but 65 million viewers or households or whatever it's viewers, and they're saying over 100 million like individual streams or something like that. I'm not sure how they broke it down, but
Yeah, I actually have those numbers.
I mean, I don't see how, if those numbers are accurate, that
So
it's anything other than a massive success for Netflix.
yeah, it's ninth highest combat sports gate ever in history. That's for live attendance. Total revenue is 18,117. Yeah, 18 million. I mean, a lot of money. Obliterating. It's almost double. They said they used the word obliterating. MVP press release because Camelo's record at $9 million gate, and then the highest the streaming was the most streamed live sports in U.S. history, and obviously the Serrano Taylor. It's probably the most historic thing that the lady should take a bow for. That it's probably the most watched live sports for women as a kind of a headlining deal, which is for boxing purists that was the main event. Obviously, that them two rematching. I caught the end of that. I mean, that was a tough fight for me to. I mean, from the few rounds that I saw at the end, I didn't even want to like have an opinion again because I was coming home from doing something else, and I was like, without watching the whole thing, I did see the headbutting thing that folks were talking about, but overall, I kind of like. I mean, I was just kind of happy that they did it again, and I wasn't surprised that nobody got finished. But did you have an opinion on that
No,
as
it was
far
a
as?
great fight of the night.
Mhm.
Most talked about fight. Really, come Monday, even after
Mhm.
309, most people in the lunchroom were
Yeah.
mentioning the women's fight for a couple different reasons. I mean, one, it was nasty cut, but for the most part, it was everything that people want to see in a boxing match. You had drama both ways.
Mhm.
Um, you had just two people that just left it in the ring, and I think that no matter what sex you are, that's just what people want
Let's
to see
see.
when they're tuning in. And they delivered. Did Serrano win the fight? I don't know.
Mm,
I'm not a judge. Did I thought I knew it was close. You
mm.
know, the point taken away led me to believe that she was going to win, just because that seems hard to overcome in a close fight that's only 10 rounds. But uh, you know, I think I felt like the announcers were heavily biased towards Serrano, and I don't know,
Yeah.
and that it being kind of an MVP kind of thing. I don't know how everybody makes their money. I know Ariel is trying to defend himself this week about
Oh,
where he collected paychecks and everything. I don't know. I don't really care, but
yeah.
I do feel like there was a little bit of a bias towards Serrano, and maybe rightfully so, maybe not, but I do feel like that. And that took us
Y-
into the main event, which go ahead
Biased against her or towards her?
towards her. I
Mm.
felt like they were. it was a pro Serrano. I mean, it felt like you had people who trained and sponsored her, basically doing some of the chat and stuff.
Oh, and the MVP are all yeah.
So, and again, maybe not. Maybe that was just me kind of being paranoid to it or sensitive to it, but it did seem like that was a bit the case. And I feel like that's the case in a lot of her fights. I feel like she's fighting for the people that are kind of broadcasting it. They're really, and I'm not taking anything away from her. She easily could have won the fight. She's decorated as shit. She's probably the most decorated female combat athlete of all time at this point, even with these losses. She's awesome. I won't miss one of her fights going forward. But at the same time, I felt like you can sell a robbery easier if the announcers are on the side of the person that they think got robbed. And we see it in MMA all the time. You know, guys are biased and they don't realize they're even being biased, but you know, it's that punch is heavy, the other one's not. Well, how do you really know? You know, they're both getting hit with a jab. Tell me that's not a, you know, tell me that one doesn't hurt, but the other one really does, you know, like, but neither here nor there. Great fight. Like I said, fight of the weekend. I don't know where either of them go from here. I'm not sure how that shakes out because they're clearly the top two female boxers. I mean, in that realm of weight.
I wouldn't mind if they did a trilogy, which is probably going to be hard to do because it looks like. I mean, one thing I'll say, you know, I like Serrano. She's fearless. She does boxing and MMA at pro levels, but the folks that she's got on her team, man, I know boxing people are very like loyal to the people that come up with them, you know, who stay with who brought them to the dance and everything. But there's folks that she's got to get rid of on the other side of stuff. I mean, I don't mean Jake Paul. Just that the man that obviously wanted to take the mic from her pretty much at the end of it there's little to be desired for him. I mean, he's done other stuff that I know about from when he cornered her for the Icon MMA fight. That was just you know, blatantly offensive to folks of my, you know, background. So I was just like, you know what, I wish it makes me hard to root for her as long as she's got that guy with her. But outside of that, I think they could do, if they did them two again as a Netflix deal, MVP Netflix deal, leave Jake Paul out of it, let them headline it. I think they did enough numbers and they brought in enough interest that folks would not only want to see it, you know, when you take the circus part out of the Tyson Paul thing and, you know, the Helwani and the interview with God knows who in between, you know, ring entrances and whatever, just present the fights as they are. I think that they got themselves a new platform for boxing.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what they could work out. I know it's two different promoters. You know, to me, like the perfect thing would be to have them each fighting somebody else back to back, co-main main event of a card, and you know, on Netflix, and then sell, if they both win, then sell that trilogy fight, you know, as a mega Netflix New Year's Eve, or you know what I mean? It would next year, however they wanted to work towards it. But it would be interesting to see if they test the waters and see how they could do on their own. How much of it was Jake? I mean, we have a lot to determine here. We still almost need Jake Paul to headline one of these cards to figure out how much of it was Mike Tyson, and then not at all to figure out how much of it was Jake Paul and, you know, I mean, there's a kind of a mix of stuff to figure out who really garnered those 65 million eyeballs. My brain tells me the vast majority is for Mike Tyson.
Oh yeah.
You know,
you know, I wrote something on LinkedIn that got brought up a lot of attention, and it was the fact that, like, I mean, when I was out Friday, and it's funny because nobody mentioned it leading up to the weekend, but as I went to the Stone Pony Friday, I'm talking about it with my buddy in the car. I mean, I train with him, so we talk fights all the time. Shout out to Eric Rubenstein. But when we got to where we were going, like I could hear people in the restaurant we went to at the Stone Pony, the chatter, like, oh, Tyson's fight. Tyson. All I heard was a Tyson fight. Tyson, it felt like the 90s, dude. Like, and that's what I wrote about on LinkedIn. And I was just like, yo, like this is really nostalgic. And by the time I got home, I found myself, after saying on when we recorded the podcast that I was going to watch it after, I tuned in to watch it. Yeah. I was excited. My heart got a little excited when it started. The first bell went. And first two rounds, I was like, "Oh, this is something." And then after that, from round 3 forward, I was just like, "Am I watching here?" You know, like I thought about turning it off. To be honest.
I mean, it's and then you talk about nostalgia, and I think nostalgia allowed people to be sold a bill of, I mean, they kind of got sold snake oil. Like, I mean, we talked about it on the podcast the day it was announced. We talked about it. I tried to be as honest with everybody in my life as I could be when I talked about this. Like, I've seen older guys fight, and it's never freaking good. And sure, he might look good for a round. It turned out he had about a good round and a half in him. Then he got hit with a jab about halfway through round 2, and reality set in. And from that point on, I really feel like Jake Paul realized, after about the 4th, 5th round, he realized he could knock Mike Tyson out. He chose to ride those rounds out. And I hear people calling that a fix. Well, if that's a fix, then just about every one of Mayweather's fight was a work. We've seen guys coast million times in MMA over the last round or two after they win the first 3. So, or when they're dominating a fight and they just play it easy. It was people blame GSP for that for a decade.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's a part of the sport. It's called winning. It's maybe not disrespecting. Maybe it's not having that killer instinct. I have no idea. But
well, that's the thing. If he went in and laid out Mike Tyson and was salivating and celebrating it, he knows that'd be the end of his career. He would be like why would you if you could have knocked him out and if you were the same age and you could have knocked him out, yeah, sure, maybe you should have, but not going in for the kill against somebody that's double your age. I mean, I don't know how you're honoring that. There's people that are calling that a work because he didn't knock him out, and I think he realized. I think I think maybe his brother being a pro wrestler, maybe kind of learned on him. Like, okay, read the crowd a little bit here, dude. Like, if you knock this guy out, like, you're going to be considered a scumbag, and you're going to have legitimately people trying to come after you. Probably. I mean, there's going to be a heavy emotional reaction if you stiffen Mike Tyson right now, and we have to watch him get carried out in a stretch. Yeah.
I mean, there was a lot that could happen that could have ruined a lot of people's nights who were sitting around with the family. Here's another one just popped into my head, but it did pop into my head while watching it. You live on the East Coast. I live on the West Coast. During the week, I get it. During the week, everybody works, so you got to start certain events at certain times. On a Saturday on Netflix, why the hell is that fight starting at 1 a.m. for you?
You mean on Friday? Yeah.
Friday. Then the UFC kicked it off with the same thing. That title fight didn't kick off with John Jones.
This was an exhausting weekend for
sure. It can't be good for views. I mean, I'm no expert on Nielsen ratings, but how can that be good for pay-per-view? How can it be good to start an event when most people are going to bed?
Friday, especially Friday, because people Saturday safer because it's the weekend. You're in the middle of the weekend, but on a Friday night, that was the day. I had work, then I went out, and then I came home. It was if it wasn't for having a drink or two in me that helped wake me up a little, I probably could not have stayed up for that.
I can state for a fact that there's no way I would have watched half of the amount of. I mean, I watched every UFC from UFC 5 nonstop till about today. I've pretty much seen every. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's been some fight nights I missed. There's no way all those pay-per-views. I've never missed a pay-per-view unless I was at a Bellator event or another fighting event. So I can't imagine. There's no way. There's no way I would have been. Even in my prime days, I wouldn't have been able to survive. 1 a.m. main events. All the time. It just seems so counterproductive, and I wonder. I obviously it's not because they're blowing up, but dude, there's no kids in New York watching the UFC. I mean, come on,
dude. So because I was kind of feeling it on Saturday because of being up so late, and I was dealing with a neck injury too, so I wasn't really myself last weekend. When Chandler and Oliveira were about to start, I did one of these because I was already tired from Friday, and that was a 5-rounder too. So
I did one of those, and it was 9:30.
Yeah.
Maybe built different, but I'm just saying, you obviously have to be built different in order to watch that stuff on the East Coast because we're just not prepared. I mean,
We can't all be Caposo, who just watches everything all the time.
You
Who's
know,
probably plugged in. I feel he might be a cyborg or something.
you know, yeah, he's just AI. He's the first AI from the start.
He's an original AI combat bot. Yeah.
But yeah, I just, it's crazy to me. And the more and more, the older I get, I guess the more and more it seems to, you know, it's harder to stay up that late. But it drives me wild thinking that, like, man, like, this is 1 o'clock in the morning. Like, I used to have so many even parties and stuff. I mean, if the main event's kicking off at 1, cops are breaking that party up. There's no going home peacefully after the main event ended at 1:30 in the morning.
There's something to be said for that too, especially the UFC at Madison Square Garden. So, I forgot Andreas Hale, my former editor from Champions.co. He's at ESPN now, and he even said something along the lines of, something about getting, about the lateness of the UFC 309. I mean, this is a good segue to start talking about it, but the one thing for folks that don't know that listen to this podcast and you're not in the tri-state area on the East Coast, the last train home from New York to New Jersey is like at 1:15 a.m. and everybody guns for that train. I'm not talking about everyone in the Garden. I'm talking about anyone that went to New York City and is trying to get back home is gunning for that train. Now you add Homeland Security, all the extra stuff with the president there. I don't know. I'm pretty sure there was people either stranded in the city, taking the PATH train home, which is another nightmare in itself, or spending over $100 on Ubers just to get back into New Jersey if you went to New Jersey or came from anywhere else to watch a UFC event. I mean, you would need, if you're coming to the UFC, if you're coming to Madison Square to watch a UFC event, getting a hotel room is probably included in your cost because you don't want to be stranded in New York City in the after hours. And just for folks, I mean, that don't know, Penn Station's right under Madison Square Garden, so you can make it. You just gotta.
Well, like I've been to a couple out there. 205 went particularly long because it had 3 title fights. That I remember walking out. I mean, after getting out of the traffic of trying to get out of the human wave of MSG, like it was 2 a.m. It was 2 a.m.
I used to crash at my buddy's house in Brooklyn, like for all the ones that you and I we drank a couple of beers before 205, but I crashed in Brooklyn all the times we've been out to the Garden for anything Bellator, UFC related. I knew I wasn't getting back home, so I had to sleep in Brooklyn. So it's definitely an experience. But speaking of which, I mean, regardless of that, I mean, people seem to be still tuned in for the fights. I know they broke all kinds of records with UFC 309, which is, I think they're just going to do that now because of the brand. They're like the WWE. They're just wherever they go, they're gonna break records because people are just going to say that they went to a UFC event. However, I don't know about this card. I would, if I were to grade the card as far as like the cards that have came to Madison Square Garden, it's not their best card, but it wasn't their worst either. I mean, it was still a fun card. I like that Jim Miller one. Trying to think, they went back to the old gloves, so those didn't last very long, 6 months.
Well, yeah, but they're still going to use them for certain events, right? Because John Jones doesn't fight at every event, so those ones they're going to use the new gloves.
Yeah,
and then when John or Connor decide that they don't want the new ones, then they'll change again. So who knows? I think it's clear when I was joking on last week about it being John Jones, it was John Jones. Like, let's not fake it anymore. John Jones even talked about talking on the phone with them and how he didn't like the gloves, and then they're changing them. So it's pretty clear what happened. I mean, they had no problem letting Max Holloway and Tapori and all these other guys use the new gloves, but John Jones decided that he didn't want to, and the UFC does what he wants now. It's been quite a change from he'll never headline another event to we don't want him in Vegas, we don't want him in New York to okay, John Jones is our godsend, and
he's their golden goose now.
Yeah, he's our golden child,
and they need a golden goose because like Pajeda's I would say Pajeda's probably their most popular guy right now. But as far as like if they're looking for just star level stuff, like Pajeda's the most reliable star that they have right now.
We talk about that, but that's why it's so important for him to fight Tom Aspinall.
Mm-hmm.
If the torch is never passed, you can never create new stars, and that's what these guys don't quite realize is that if at least that's what John Jones is not realizing.
Yeah.
You know, the only reason John Jones exists is because Shogun gave him a fight. What if Shogun passed on that fight? John Jones fights so and so instead, blows out and never recovers.
And looks like Dana White is standing on that hill too for Aspinall to happen. He said it multiple times, multiple interviews. The other thing is that he said though is because from dealing with him, I don't know if he was kind of confessing, but he was like, you know, John Jones, he made a lot of money tonight, and he's like, well, he's probably going to disappear, and we're not going to hear anything from him, and he'll fight when he gets bored at home or whatever. But the fight has to be with Tom Aspinall, which I agree with.
I agree with that, but I feel like guys are always going home whenever it's time for Dana to pull up a bunch of money to put on a mega fight.
Mm.
You know what I mean? All guys are always have enough money and are ready to hang out on the couch when it's time for. How about offer him $30 million? I guarantee he fights next weekend. What are we talking about?
Yeah,
you know, like
it's not like they don't have it. Yeah,
no, I mean that's what it comes down to, and I think that's what it always comes down to. It's all this. It's why we didn't get Fade or Lesnar and Couture and all. I mean, when the money has to be put down on the table, like you get guys that's why it took so long to get Chuck Liddell and Tito Ortiz. It's not because those guys didn't want to fight each other. I mean, they can say whatever they want to say. If they would have paid the money, they would have fought the next day. You know, it's these guys are fighters. Nobody's dodging anybody. But it didn't look good for John initially, and then maybe he was just kind of playing the heel role. You know, I mean, he dug in a little bit, got people on Tom's side, created a great baby face out of Tom Aspinall. Now, I mean, he's loved by. I mean, he had the room going crazy when his name was getting mentioned. So, I mean, that's how you start to build that star. And then, you know, in a perfect world, honestly, he goes out there, he beats John Jones, and then he's your dominant heavyweight for the next handful of years until he eventually passes. I mean, that's how it would be nice to have a steady flow of that happening.
What do you think about the undisputed?
I meant to bring that up last week, too, when we were talking. I was going to say if any title was ever disputed, it would be one where you have an interim title holder sitting cage side with a copy of the belt that they give the champion. I mean, so that was.
Well, even when you look at because like McGracken was bringing it up right before the fight, and I was like, that's interesting to see because I mean if any title in MMA promotion is disputed, it would be the UFC heavyweight title, but since Ngannou left as the champion,
there you go. It's multiple disputes.
Yeah,
it's not, know, there's 3 people that have a claim to that title. At this point. I don't know. I don't know how. Listen. I didn't think Jones looked great. I thought Stipe looked terrible.
Like who expected?
We said it. I mean, from day one. It's why I wasn't interested in this fight, despite it being 2 guys who I wouldn't miss their fights for anything in this world.
Stipe, if that happened when Stipe was active, I would have been.
I mean, Stipe didn't want to be there.
No,
he even said thank God or whatever. I'm done about retirement after the post-fight interview. Like that's not the words of somebody who just got crushed in their retirement fight. I mean, in a legacy building fight. I mean, there was no emotion. He just didn't give a crap, and I think that showed kind of in his. I don't want to say that he didn't try, but he did. He got KO'd in his last fight 4 years ago. I mean, you could only. You're not going to recreate yourself. You know, I dreamed it for Fedor multiple times, and every time I sat there with my head in my hands going, I got to learn. Now, that doesn't mean I don't go to the fight and support him and cheer while he walks down the ring and watch him in the ring. But when the third fight after watching him lose the second time to Bader, it wasn't like I was in shock. I was bummed. I even talked about it on this podcast. Actually, that was guest on other. I talked about how it was an end for me, and that's just how it ended. I didn't feel like it felt like Stipe didn't even want to be there. It didn't feel like when Fedor lost, I felt like, dude, this guy's heartbroken. He really wanted to win that. Stipe, I just felt like, I got one last payday. Let's get back to the fire station.
Yeah.
I'm going to retire. I don't want to interview people. I'm not a great public speaker. I don't really want to talk to anybody.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
GovX.com.
It just felt that way. So I don't know, but I didn't see anything in Jones. If there was no past of John Jones, and that was the only fight I was watching, I would have been like, well, he's kind of slow. He's got he got him down. He beat the shit out of him on the ground. He didn't finish him. he had dominant position, didn't finish him, hit him with some bunch of elbows, but again, I mean, I don't know. Like if I want to pick apart, he just didn't look like. I feel like John Jones of 10 years ago finishes that Stipe Miocic in like 2.5 minutes, like he's Vladimir Matyshenko.
Well, I mean, you got to remember, Stipe is a tough guy. I mean, one thing about firefighters that train in combative arts, and I've only trained with one, but I remember the thing that stood out was just the durability and toughness and strength. And Jones even kind of commented on that when they were talking to him afterwards. He was just like, yeah, no, he actually was like, a couple of times I hit him and I hurt my hand trying to knock him out. That's why he eventually went for the body shot, because he was like, the head's not working on this guy. I mean, and to Stipe's credit too, like all those elbows he took and he only had that one cut. I mean, that's a tough dude.
No, I listen, he's tough. He's tough. And that was the only thing that made that fight last, is that he is tough, but we need to see the Aspinall fight. That's the fight that has to happen with John Jones at heavyweight. Yeah. If he's going to say, we don't need, that's the fight that has to happen. It has to happen for that division to have any chance.
I mean, everybody, there's a few people saying too that all the shit of him trying to brush off the fight, I think that's early negotiation. He's probably trying to get buku money for the fight.
It's hard to sell. It's hard to sell. Yeah, I'm fighting a bum. I should be fighting this dude. I get that. It'd be weird for him to be fighting Stipe and then have to admit the week of fighting Stipe that he's really just fighting a tune-up fight to get a paycheck. I mean, that's kind of the way I saw it, and it just sucks that has how it has to be. But that's what it was. That's what it was.
Yeah, my prediction is we either get him and Aspinall for International Fight Week if McGregor's rape trial gets thrown out the window or whatever, or if they can somehow get McGregor back. I don't think McGregor's coming back though. But I mean, that leads me into the co-main event, because one thing that came up with Chandler Oliveira fight that I was like, I gotta save this for the podcast and ask Matt, because I've never thought this about Michael Chandler, but the dirty fighter thing. Did you?
It's kind of undeniable now.
Yeah. But I don't remember ever having that opinion.
Wasn't.
Yeah.
But when you look at the Poirier fight, and I don't think the back of the head shots were as blatant as everybody says. If you look at the stupid rule for what a back of the head shot is, it's like a skinny mohawk down the side of the head or middle of the head. So there is a little bit of that I'll give Peterson, and I'm not going to say that he hit him with all 18 to the back of the head.
Yeah.
But did he hit him to the back head multiple times?
Absolutely.
Yes. Absolutely.
Fence grab, multiple fence grabs. Stuff. Yeah.
Do I consider a random fence grab dirty fighter? No, because I feel like that there's some natural reaction when you're getting thrown through the air that you're going to try to brace yourself, and sometimes that requires putting your arm somewhere where it legally shouldn't be. I don't consider that a dirty fighter. Do I think he's intentionally a dirty fighter? No. I just think he's kind of out of control. And I think that's always been his problem, because Michael Chandler is the only fighter that I watch. And again, he's one of my top 25 fighters of all time. I've watched the guy fight so many times in person. I've met him a million times. He's the only fighter I watch when he gets in advantage position, I'm like, okay, he's going to lose now. I feel like it's so much. Like, he got that position on Oliveira, and he's hitting him in the back. And then once I realized the ref's not saying anything, I'm like, oh, dude, he's gonna TKO him right now. He's like literally like 2 punches away from the ref stopping that fight. Like, I mean, literally, he's that close.
He also he's saying he also had his fingers in his gloves. I didn't catch that, but again, it was very late for me. So
there was a time. There was complaints that he was doing. Oliveira was complaining that he was doing some of that. I just think he's out of control. He's out of control.
The out of control thing, though, do you think it's? I mean, because as I'm watching it and I'm reading all the comments after the fact, and again, I'm a big Chandler fan. Like you, I mean, I rode the elevator with him in the Viacom bill. He's the reason why I take BCAAs now. I tell people that story all the time. But I wonder how much of the out of control is because of all the damage from all the wars. Like I don't want to call him punchy, but do you think it's just because he might be a little punchy?
I feel like he's always been out of control. I think that's just the way he fights. And I think that he was just, when Bellator, you beat guys quick and you knock them out, so you don't have a chance to show it. Like, listen, Michael Chandler's the kind of guy who he knocks you out cold in the middle of the ring. He might come down with a H-bomb on the back of your head. You know, like I don't think it's in his mind like I'm breaking the rules. I think it's like I'm a savage, and again, you have to follow the rules, which is. But he's not getting carded. He's not getting points taken away. That's the problem. I mean, I think it's worse for the sport to talk about. Where you can go, well, nobody's getting points taken away from this stuff. Like Peterson should be. I don't know what punishment you could ever do to a referee, and I don't want to cost the guy's livelihood by any means. I think he's a fairly good referee. But there should be some kind of responsibility for him to explain why I didn't. What? Okay. Dude, you just hit
Speaking of ref, you just reminded me. The Herb Dean meet. Well, what fight was that for? I already forgot.
I can't remember, but it was hashtag New Jersey. I want to say it was after the remember the beating that CB Dalloway took? He took like a Russian fighter. I can't remember who it was, but CB Dalloway took a beating where it was like just unconscious shots to the head nonstop, and I think that's when I made it. I made it at a UFC event, though. I think I don't remember.
I'm looking. Oh, here it is. I gotta share it for folks because he sent this to me on Saturday, and I was like, why is it? First of all, we've been doing this podcast since 2017. Why is this the first time I'm seeing it?
It's a tweet from 2019. Yeah,
but for what fight was that for? On I'm already forgetting the fight.
Okay, there was a fight with CB Doll. I think it was. I've made a few memes about him. I made one.
No, the fight though on the 309 that prompted you to send me this. It was
the. Oh God, what fight do we? It had to have been a prelim. Oh my gosh, I don't even remember.
Yeah, I mean we'd have to look at the card, but.
I'm looking at it. I still can't even remember.
Whatever one it was. It was one of the later cards. It was definitely one of the broadcast cards on FX.
Yeah, I can't remember, but it was somebody took a beating. Why can't I? Yeah, I don't remember which one it is. It might be the Tabura fight, maybe, because I know he had a lot of dominant positions.
Yeah, that was it.
But it was because yes, because he forced the doctor to stop it.
Yeah.
Rather than do his job, he counted down the countdown clock to the end of the round.
That was it. Yeah.
And then
the first fight on the broadcast.
When it was clear the dude was. Yeah, that was it. But yeah, I don't know. He's just all over the place because I know I made a meme or tweeted something out a while back when I was in Vegas and he stopped the fight early. And I said, yeah, that's because the dispensaries close in 15 minutes and he had to get there in time. But
yeah, it was definitely the Tybura one, but that was also just like, I mean, the more fights go on, the more I can't defend him anymore. I know you and I used to debate about it, but now I'm just like,
no, it's like you had Jared, whatever his name was,
Jared Villel. That's me.
And I started watching him, and I was like, wow, Ed's not far off on this guy.
But his path to criticism was very short. I mean, I know Henry Gracie had issues with him, and apparently Damon Martin over MMA Fighting is.
But I don't see him anymore.
He judges now.
Does he? Okay.
He does a lot of judging now. I have seen him on smaller shows because the stuff we do with Spectation Sports. So I've seen him. He still does it, but he for the bigger shows they had I guess to stay away from criticism, he does judging now. That way Derek Cleary and whoever all the other guys.
That way there's no transparency at all.
Yeah. But I mean, I don't know. I always like when the UFC comes to the Garden, especially when they come to New York. Just because of the history involved and how the sport was banned up until 2016. So when they come, I mean, granted, I thought things were gonna happen differently on a grander scale, not just for my Mr. Frumproof, Joseph Correa. What's up? Not just what I thought was going to happen with the sport and the growth, just because of New York City being the media capital of at least North America and some people say the world. I thought we'd get more MMA than we did, but we don't get as much as I thought we were going to get. The UFC is pretty much the only ones outside the PFL that come up and put on a few shows. And Bellator, rest in peace Bellator, because they're not
Pandemic
around
shut that down. Pandemic
Yeah.
ended it. Without the
Yeah.
pandemic, you'd still be getting 5 Bellator cards a year at Mohegan Sun.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if they couldn't. The pandemic was going to stop the Bob Backish that pretty much wrecked all of that.
No, but it killed all the
Yeah.
momentum they had going
Yeah.
into the pandemic. They were pretty strong, man. There was some really good fights lined up that just never
Yeah.
happened, and momentum was killed. I mean, it's
Yeah.
not the complete reason. They obviously had leadership problems, but yeah. So, on a good UFC side note, anybody that's listening that has bought tickets to UFC 310. I'm gonna do
Matt's been talking about
Trump
this
dance
for like a
here
week.
now. As I got back money on my tickets. Prices dropped. Main event changed. So there is some money to be had. If you purchase tickets, call Access. Tell them the main event changed.
Yeah.
Tell them that as a purchaser in Nevada, you have the right to a refund or a seat transfer. For me, the option was to get the total refund and rebuy my same exact seats and get back a handful of money. I would recommend that if you bought tickets. If you have questions on it, feel free to PM me on Twitter, and I'd be happy to walk you through the process to help any fan out to get some money back from those guys while still supporting them. But yeah, so that's cool. The other things that working out for me, I found out about 2 weeks ago. There's a BKFC this Saturday night in Los Angeles. Fight Night LA BKFC. Ruben War headlines again against Bovar Kanakov of the Ukraine. Ruben War coming off of a 6-second knockout out here in Pachanga at his last Fight Night fight. LeVar Johnson, Big Daddy Johnson, old school Strike Force, UFC. I think even Bellator. Pretty much fought everywhere. Big dude. Fought for Shamrock, Valor Bare Knuckle. I think he even fought for the one that went out under Lieben and or not. Anyways, the one that folded after an event because it didn't pay its fighters.
Yeah.
So he's on it. Big shot. He's fighting Rashad Coulter, another veteran of UFC, Masvidal Bare Knuckle, BKFC. So, there's definitely a handful of fights. I'm also seeing, if he's still on here, Chase Gormley, who's kind of an older name, fought in Strike Force, UFC, was around the same time. I think he had a fight with Bobby Lashley, if I'm correct on that. So some old big names, and they're fighting at a small studio where Sean Merriman holds his Lights Out production. So it should be a small, intimate arena. I'm looking forward to getting out to Long Beach for it.
Like you had said, that's equivalent to like a UFC fight night for Bare Knuckle, because they came out with their Knuckle Mania news today. Alvarez and Eddie Alvarez, Jeremy Stevens in Philadelphia. That's something that Alvarez I know wanted. He told David Feldman last time he fought Mike Perry that he wanted to do a Philly card, a BKFC Philly card, and BKFC seems to be going full steam ahead, whether it be the McGregor influence or whatever they're doing right over there. And that's going to be in December, right? Or January. When's that Knucklemania?
January 25th.
Yeah, in Philly. So it'll be a nice card to look forward to in 2025. BKFC going full steam ahead. And just other BKFC news that came out over the weekend. Jason Knight has hung up his gloves. I mean, he's MMA fighter. He fought some bare knuckle too. Fought Game Bred MMA was his last couple of fights. I think that's bare knuckle MMA.
Mm-hmm.
But solid fighter. Hung up his gloves over the week. Kind of went under the radar. I just feel like definitely an entertaining fighter, and I felt like that needed to be kind of acknowledged a little more than it was. So, I mean, tough week for retiring, with all the high profile events going on, but definitely something to remember. These guys, while we're sitting home clanking beer cans and clapping and stuff like that, they're over there, blood, sweat, and tears. They don't win them all. A lot of putting their bodies on the line for them. It's glory, but for us, that are just hobbyists. Even it's we watch it as entertainment or education, but it's something that they're still doing. Sacrifice a lot to do for folks that enjoy it. So shout out to Jason Knight for putting on a good show for however many years he's been fighting.
For always putting on a good show.
Mm-hmm.
For always putting on a good show. Yeah, no, good career, fun fighter, somebody everybody loved to watch. So,
Mm-hmm.
I think that kind of wraps us up.
Next week's Thanksgiving. I don't know if we're gonna record because I might have to do some stuff with my teaching schedule and Thanksgiving. I mean, just it feels like the year is rushing too fast ahead. So we may or may not be on next week. I just wanted to put that out there now, so that way folks don't wonder where we're at on the week.
Yeah, that makes some sense. We'll follow that up with a preview of the end of UFC 310. If we're not here next week, the following week will be 310 preview.
That's the one where you just gave the
dance. Yeah. So so that's in a couple weeks. That's December 7th.
Yeah.
And now with Rachmanov, Ian Gary, new co-main event. There's some cool fights on that card to look forward to. We also have to talk about the potential demise of Nick Diaz and what his future on this planet hopefully holds for him. Not necessarily in the fighting world if he's getting pulled for fights for the reasons that it seems to be the case right now. I guess until then, fans can follow the show at Combat Hour on Twitter, Coast-to-Coast Combat Hour on Instagram. Follow me, Matthew Hawkins, at MMAHawk21 on Twitter and Instagram. Follow Ed at Carbazol on Twitter, Carbeerzol on Instagram, and Old Head Carb on Twitch. Thank you for listening, everyone. Thank you for the comments, and have a good night.
Peace.